I'm probably definitely a 9 or a 10. I think I never class myself as a full 10, because I think there's a difference between someone who seeps their entire life in nothing but Star Wars and someone who respects it but has other parts of their life. And so I think I was around about 5 or 6, and some kids in the street were teasing me, calling me Luke Skywalker. I have no idea who Luke Skywalker is. I remember running in home and crying to my mother and going, the kids on the street, they're calling me Luke Skywalker. And she was like, okay, it's time. And so we watched the first movies. I think the first one I saw was Empire Strikes Back, and then Return of the Jedi, and I didn't see A New Hope till many years later, and that was probably the entry point of Star Wars for me. And it kind of went away for a few years, but I was probably like 7 or 8 when those re-releases happened. And it probably wasn't till I was about 12 or 13 that I kind of picked up the franchise again, because that's when the prequels were starting to come, and Star Wars Galaxies, the video game, came out, and that was really my deep diving point into Star Wars. And that's actually where JJ Industries came as a name, from Star Wars Galaxy. So my character was called Jendor Jite, and I made spaceships in that, and then I carried on, and then in real life we made a replica of the Falcon, and I went, I'm going to keep the name. So yeah, that's, like you say, it's been an evolution. We started in our kitchen dining room, then we ended up on a double garage, and now we've got, a workshop, which I'm, really, really thankful for. So yeah, it's an evolution for sure. Well, I think when we were looking for a name for a company, we look at a lot of companies that set up in the UK or set up in a certain region, and they'll normally always coin themselves a term that is local to them, like Northern Effects or Newcastle Props or something like that. They're total made-up company names, they're not for real. And I guess for me, the idea, I wanted to make something that potentially could have an impact outside of this area, and because of the sci-fi background, it has a little bit of a tie there. It's space, it evokes what we ideally would like to be making for people on film and TV. Of course, we're going to be doing breakaway bottles, smashing glasses, bits of standard fare effects and prop work, but really the high-end ideals we want to do, we want to be making, the sci-fi props, the belts, the costumes, the armour, the exciting touchstone pieces, because really that's what makes us get up in the morning and be excited to come in and make things. So all the same reasons we enjoy doing replica costumes are exactly what we want to do. And so Orbital really kind of just embodies the ideals of what we want to do with that company. And so yeah, that's where Orbital comes from. Basically, in effects, obviously, it's a lovely catch-all for a lot of things of what we do, whether that's smashed plastics, electronics, costumes, effects. Shamefully, I'll admit that I haven't actually got that many, and I think that's because I think I get in my own head a little bit about that perfectionism thing, which is a big thing I try and avoid. But at some point you have to say what's good enough, and it's interesting that everybody has a very different level of where that hits, between where you're going to stop and where you're going to start. So yeah, it's really interesting. Kylo was the first one that I kind of did full from nothing, really. And when I say full from nothing, there was still other vendors involved, but I made the fabric from scratch. I learned how to draft fabric because no one had access to it, and Kylo was really that first big one that I was like, I'm going to tackle most all major parts that I can. I did the buckles, the belts, the fabrics, patterns, working with some people. So I really dove head first. I even sculpted the helmet, and I think, like most people, found us out because we did a design for Kylo Ren's helmet and we gave it away for free, which was pretty unheard of in those days. People were, they play their cards quite close to their chest, but for me it was a stepping stone development, so I gave it away. But we got, I think 3dprint.com did an article on us, and some other people did. When we did it, it was quite a big deal, but I didn't quite appreciate that it wasn't a normal thing to give away your digital data at that point. Anybody with neurodiversity or ADHD will tell you that they're desperate to move on to the next thing, and Luke very much, I always felt that way as a kid, where it was like, okay, I'm a bit bored of this now, I want to go and do the next thing. And so, Luke was a really great channel for that. So when I got into my professional capacity as an engineer, it was great working on that tech, because always in the back of my mind it's like, this is sci-fi tech. and I get to play with it and make it. You know, you do your little bit of programming, you do your first little bit of flashing lights, and the first thing you think of it, this could be any background panel in Star Wars or any control panel, and you know, your mind starts opening up to that kind of things. But I was going down that route professionally. I wasn't doing props at the time, but it, you know, still informed me pretty heavily in the type of design I wanted to do. I am an engineer. I have a full-time day job. I work for a multinational engineering company, and I think I very much took myself as an engineer doing engineering work in the costuming space, and that was how I took my approach. That kind of feeling about what I am in the space has evolved over the years, because I kind of feel now I do this as an engineer and I use engineering principles, but I'm not taking it as just an engineer now. I think now I am looking at it more on the artistic way of how can this you know, work. I say artistically, it's still engineering actually when I really think about it, because I really care about how's the fit, how's the function, how's the durability. These are all considerations that you don't really have to care with when you're doing film props or TV props, because they're used for such short space of time. A lot of what we're making, people are wanting to go out every weekend, they're wanting to troop with them regularly. So for me, it's an engineering challenge. How do you make these things look as good as they did on screen, but last for a very long time? And so I think I've used the term creative engineer, which, you know, is maybe a little bit of a spin on Imagineering, which is obviously Disney's big thing. And so that's kind of the approach I take. I kind of see myself as a professional doing a job that you know, I wasn't originally trained for, but I'm attacking it as a professional from a different industry. So the answer is I don't know. It's evolving. Every time I think about what I would class myself as is. And this is how society is now. Maybe it's going to influence society, and we have to accept the upset that people kick back about some of this content today is because the society hasn't caught up with the ideals that we're putting on our shows. So yeah, it's a very interesting thing to look at, the cross section of the content really. And I think also as well, people that absorb a thing that they love, you know, people who love the original trilogy and only the original trilogy, will always see anything that's outside of that as an infringement on their enjoyment of that original. And what I would say is just don't watch other things. If you only love the originals, just watch the originals. That's fine. You can continue to love it and you will still be a Star Wars fan. But I think maybe they struggle with new content because it doesn't represent their vision of what Star Wars should be. And unfortunately, music, film, TV, anything like that, anytime you're putting your interpretation onto it of what that reality is, you're always going to be either overly impressed or overly disappointed. It's someone else's perspective on that. You know, maybe it aligns with what you do, maybe it doesn't align with what you do. You know, it's TV, it's film. You know, enjoy it for what you can, basically. The fandom in Star Wars almost mirrors reality in an odd way, in that I feel when I first joined the community, it was an existing community that existed for quite a while, and there was a new generation of fans slowly joining. You know, you had the original trilogy fans, which are the previous generation to myself. Then you had the prequel fans, which are my generation, which, you know, when we were coming through, we didn't really have a big voice globally. You know, you hear all of the feedback, you know, the things that Ahmed Best went through, the feedback that Hayden Christensen got about those movies. And really, the people who were the age who wanted to shout loudly about them and care about them weren't on the global stage. Now we are. We are now the mature generation. We're elder millennials now, you know, we're out there in the world. And I think the prequels are now looked at in such a fond way that it's interesting. It's kind of folded into the core Star Wars fandom, really. But I guess what I'm finding, which is a little worrying in the global landscape, is that people are quite divided. I think in the last 5 years, I think people have been more divided in their opinions, and I think that stretches into Star Wars as well. I feel happiest when I go to places like Star Wars Celebration, because I feel you've got a big group of people who are moderately centrist about Star Wars. You've got quite a lot of people who have got bits they like, they've got bits they don't like, and for me that is where the Star Wars fandom is at its best. When everybody gets together and says, you know what, I love this, I don't love this so much, but it's okay because you like it, carry on. And I think if a lot more people took that approach to every aspect of your life, the world would probably be a happier place. And so I hope in the fandom that, you know, we can make the fandom the way we want it to be. And so I think there's a lot of learning from the fandom to bring everyone together. And I'm hoping, you know, we've made this big, massive community. People who only love Mandalorian, people who only love Rogue One, they only love the originals, only love the prequels, only love the sequels. We just need to come together and find a space where everybody loves all of Star Wars to some degree. Probably from the prop maker world, which would be my advice to anybody coming into the costume space, and not just general fandom, is that, you know, work with your community members. Everybody wins when people work together, whether it's either friendship or communication or prop making. Any time you can ally yourself with someone else, work with them, people work together, and the community benefits as a whole. I found all of the best instances of the community being at its very best are when people are being kind to each other, they're being friendly to each other, they're helping them out, they're either, you know, helping them through a problem with a costume. Maybe they've never sewn through this material before and it's just going badly. And someone's been very kind and said, you know, I'm going to take you off into Facebook Messenger and we're going to talk about this, we're going to sort it out. They for me are where the Star Wars community shines its very most, when those creative people get together and help each other. And yeah, so my advice would be, help someone who may be in a position that you would scoff at today, because I see a lot of people doing that. A new person will come into a costume group. Here's my first costume. You'll get a raft of positive comments, and then you'll get the odd person who just puts something really negative. And I think you have to put yourself in those person's shoes. How would they feel? How would it make them feel? Would it change their life if you could just spend some time with them and help them make that experience better? And I think if you give out to the community what you want back, you'll have a better time. So help each other, be nice to each other. Life is too short.